All right, let's jump right into this explainer. You know that completely exhausting feeling? We're all basically running on this endless, high-speed treadmill, just constantly chasing external validation. We're trying to dress perfectly, make more money, get the best grades, snag that fancy job title, and it's all just to prove to the world, and let's be real, secretly to ourselves, that we actually matter. But what if that entire pursuit is just fundamentally flawed? Today we're diving into some incredibly profound insights from Session 4 of a really remarkable self-worth course. We're going to set the stage for a massive paradigm shift here. We'll explore exactly why chasing external value is a total illusion and how reclaiming our unconditional self-worth is literally the only way to step off that treadmill for good. So here's the trap. Tying our self-worth to these fluctuating external factors is incredibly dangerous. It's a classic double-edged sword. Sure, when you get the promotion, or buy the fancy car, or people are hyping up your looks, you feel absolutely amazing. Your perceived value skyrockets. But what happens on the flip side? What happens when business is slow for a month, or a friend walks away, or you just make a normal human mistake? Because your baseline identity is changed to those external metrics, losing them doesn't just make you sad. It completely destroys your core sense of self. You instantly feel worthless, simply because the foundation you built your entire identity on was totally out of your control in the first place.
To really grasp how deep this trap goes, just look at this number, $3 billion. There's this wild story from our source material about a hacker who managed to steal over $3 billion worth of Bitcoin. Now you'd think someone sitting on that kind of unimaginable wealth would feel pretty secure, right? Well, the reality was the exact opposite. Internally, he felt so utterly worthless that his staggering wealth literally couldn't fix his self-esteem. He was so desperate for validation that he'd walk into bars and buy drinks for 100 strangers. He would even, get this, fly random people on private jets to Beverly Hills just to buy them designer clothes. All of that just to bribe strangers to hang out with him. Despite having $3 billion, his best and only true friend was his dog. External wealth just cannot fill an internal void. It's impossible.
So how do we even get here? Where does this destructive cycle actually come from? Sadly, our environment systematically conditions us to believe that worth is something we've got to constantly earn through performance. Think about it. From a very young age, we're bombarded with comparisons. We're measured against the kid who gets better grades, or is better at sports, or is just generally easier. Then we're handed these totally unrealistic parental and societal expectations, basically telling us we're only valuable if we hit specific milestones. Add to that the artificial highlight reels of social media today, constantly whispering that our real, messy, everyday lives just aren't good enough. Society creates this completely false narrative that you're born lacking value and you have to spend your entire life hustling to acquire it. And because of all this conditioning, as we start achieving any level of success, we usually start wearing what we can call the social mask. We build up this fabricated, completely exhausting identity to protect our perceived value. When you aren't known, you have nothing to lose, so you're relaxed, right? But the second you gain a little reputation, the moment even a few people look up to you, the fear sets in. You start wearing this incredibly heavy mask, absolutely terrified that if you show any vulnerability, if you admit to a flaw or a fear, people will see the real you and decide you're unworthy. Let me tell you, maintaining that illusion takes a massive toll.
Let's actually compare these two ways of living. On one side, we have conditional worth. This is the life lived entirely behind that mask. It requires constant proof, it lives in perpetual fear of judgment, and it's always desperately scrambling to hide any flaws. It's just nonstop anxiety. But on the other side, we have authentic living. This is where true peace is at. The source material heavily emphasizes the profound freedom you find in self-disclosure, when you can just take a deep breath and say, hey, I struggle with this, or I completely messed up here. Without fearing judgment, you literally disarm the world. You become unbothered by opinions because your worth simply isn't up for debate anymore. You're embracing vulnerability not as a weakness, but as a bold testament to your unshakable internal value.
I want to pause here and ask you a question, and I want you to be brutally honest with yourself for a second. Do you feel worthy without your external labels? Seriously, if you were stripped of your job title, your bank balance, your degrees, and the way you look right now, would you still feel inherently valuable? Or would you feel this rising sense of panic, kind of like you just disappeared? It's a really tough diagnostic question, but your answer reveals exactly where your foundation of self-worth is currently built.
The easiest way to really wrap our heads around the logic of innate worth is to think about a newborn baby. That baby has absolutely zero resume. They haven't earned a single dime, they haven't passed any exams, and they definitely haven't achieved any social status. Yet when you look at a newborn, no one in their right mind questions their absolute worthiness of love and care. The baby isn't sitting in their crib stressing out about how to earn their next meal or prove they're valuable. They just ask for what they need, completely comfortable in their inherent worth. And the crazy thing is, we all started exactly like that baby.
Here's another amazing metaphor to consider. Imagine a true masterpiece of a book. The actual value of that book lies in the words, the wisdom, the story inside the pages. Now, does the value of that book change if it's placed on a velvet pillow in some grand library versus if it's tossed into a dusty basement with its cover completely ripped off? Absolutely not. The packaging changes, sure, the external circumstances change, but the fundamental internal value of the book remains exactly the same. You are that book. Your lack of perfect packaging or ideal circumstances doesn't alter your fundamental internal value by even a fraction. And this right here brings us to the core paradigm shift of this whole explainer. The old view basically tells us, I am flawed and empty, therefore I have to succeed, I must hustle, I have to perform just to become worthy. But the source material flips this entirely on its head to give us the new view. Actually, scratch the old view entirely, because the truth is, I am unconditionally worthy right now, simply because I exist. And that feeling of worthiness is what gives me the courage to succeed. It's a total game changer. You don't get success to build self-worth. You build self-worth so you have the courage to take the actions that lead to success. It's that baseline feeling of worthiness that makes you raise your hand, pitch that wild new idea, or walk up and introduce yourself to someone. The action springs from the worth, not the other way around.
To really hammer this home, let's look at this incredible contrast from the course. There's a story of a boxer who was pushed into the sport by his supercritical father who constantly made him feel worthless. This guy went on to win the Golden Gloves 5 times, even snagged a professional heavyweight title. But because his worth was completely tied to this external validation he could never quite satisfy, the irony is he felt absolutely nothing when they handed him the championship belt. He still felt worthless. Now compare that to a wildly wealthy merchant in a bazaar, a guy who owned hundreds of stores. This merchant rode a rusty old bicycle to work and wore threadbare 40-year-old clothes. Why? Because he was so full of internal worth that he genuinely didn't care what anyone thought of his appearance. He didn't need to flaunt his wealth to feel valuable. He had profound inner peace.
Okay, so how do we practically make this shift? This source outlines a really clear, logical process for unmasking and detaching our self-esteem from external outcomes. Step 1. Identify your triggers. When you feel that sudden drop in self-worth, just notice it. Was it a critical comment? Did you miss a goal? Step 2. Challenge the logic. Ask yourself, does making a mistake actually make me a fundamentally worthless human being? The answer is literally always no. Step 3. Replace that flawed logic with the undeniable truth of your innate, unchangeable worth. And finally, step 4. Practice authentic self-disclosure. Just start taking off the mask. Admit a flaw. Share a failure. Watch how the world doesn't end, and just feel that immense relief that follows.
This is the ultimate realization right here. And look, it's not about repeating hollow affirmations 100 times a day in the mirror while your brain is quietly rejecting them. It's about logically anchoring yourself to this one non-negotiable fact. I am worthy simply because I exist. You don't have to earn it, you don't have to negotiate for it, and absolutely no one can take it away from you. Your worth was established the literal second you were born into this universe, and it has not fluctuated a single bit since that day, regardless of your biggest successes or your absolute worst failures.
Which leaves us with this final, thrilling thought. We spend so much of our finite energy, our creativity, and our time just trying to prove to the world that we deserve a seat at the table. But if you truly internalize this lesson, if you just dropped the heavy mask, accepted your innate value, and stopped trying to prove your worth today, what incredible things would you finally have the energy and the freedom to build? Really think about that for a moment. It is a completely different way to live. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I truly hope this sparks a beautiful shift in how you see yourself.